Thanks, Burhan. I want to thank Burhan and the organizers for inviting me, and thank you all for coming to Chicago. Hopefully you're able to enjoy yourselves here. We gave you a flavor of Chicago winter yesterday and this morning, and later this afternoon, hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit of Chicago spring before you go home. What I'm going to talk about, actually some themes that sort of follow up on what Tamir was describing, what I think Asu is also going to talk about. And in particular, for the energy system and the electric power system in particular, because this is an engineering system that's embedded in a larger economic system and actually is a big part of the economies throughout this continent as well as around the world. And it's something in which optimization plays a very large role. Whenever you're turning on the lights, there's actually an optimization that's going on to decide who it is that's going to dispatch that power to be able to provide the lighting for you or the power for your computer. It's something that we see that can be improved, and that optimization, more of the optimization, the kinds actually that Burhan was mentioning in terms of stochastic optimization, can actually improve that system. And so what I want to do in this is to tell you a little bit about how the electric power system works in different parts of the world, and where it is that optimization can play a role, and play an increasingly important role in making things more efficient, making our lives better. So I'll talk about that. And one of the reasons for bringing this up is that there's a lot of renewable resources that we're trying to take advantage of, particularly wind and solar power. And we'd like to be able to use those resources because they don't add to the greenhouse gases in our environment. But there's considerable uncertainty in their operation. We don't know exactly where the wind's going to blow at any point in time. We don't know exactly what the cloud cover is going to be and how much solar power we're going to have. And that leads to challenges for designing a system that can take advantage of that. The opportunities of having a grid that actually responds to it, the smart grid, that increases flexibility. It increases the opportunity of bringing in those renewables, but it can also increase the uncertainty, and that adds to the dilemmas of making things efficient. In particular, the way the markets are designed in most places in the world right now, it actually creates inefficiencies, and I'll show you a little bit about that. But there are opportunities for us to redesign these systems and to optimize them, and explicitly recognize, not avoid the uncertainty, not try to do away with it, but actually to recognize it and to put it into the design of the systems. And then by doing that we can actually reduce the inefficiency and make these systems better. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about renewable resources and market design, and then some of the solutions with optimization. Okay, so this is just to give you a view of what's going on in the world. We're adding renewable generation at a large rate. This is showing you U.S. wind power, well, this is showing you total wind power. In the U.S., it's about 60 gigawatts now, even more. Almost 300 gigawatts globally. It's increasing at a rapid rate. It seems like this is a great opportunity. However, there are challenges in incorporating wind into the grid. What this shows you is the wind power that was being produced a few years ago in the region that includes Champagne. That basically is the middle part of the continent. It's called the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator region. It actually is it extends from the Hudson Bay at the north and includes the province of Manitoba, and then goes down to the Gulf of Mexico, to the state of Louisiana. So this middle part of the continent has about 60 million people inhabiting it, and generates, on average, about 5% of its power from wind. However, it's very variable. You can see here that sometimes there's almost no wind produced at all in this wide region of North America, whereas it's at some points in time, it's a large percentage of it, almost 9 gigawatts being produced at one point in time. Now, what must happen in order for the load to be continuously delivered from this point down here, where there's almost no wind, to this point up here, where there's 7.5 gigawatts, is that we have to be able to respond with other sources of power. So there has to be thermal generators that are going to take up that load when it dips, and then that can shut down. So they have to both increase to absorb the load and then decrease when the wind is being made available. And that creates a burden on the rest of the system, and it creates opportunities for inefficiencies. It also creates opportunities for people to exercise market power and try to exploit these kinds of conditions. Now, the same thing is essentially happening for solar power, but at a somewhat reduced scale, about 10 times less, at least in the United States, although globally it's somewhat more. So solar power also is increasing at a rapid rate, and that's leading to the same types of challenges. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how most of these systems are operated. It's either operated by a government agency, or in this case, in North America, by non-government, non-profit agencies who coordinate the distribution of power, who coordinate the purchase of wholesale energy and then the delivery to residential and commercial customers. So this independent system operator, like the Mid-Continent system that I described, what it does is it's continuously monitoring things, and as I said, optimizing, trying to find out what's the best combination of generation that will deliver power to people when they want it, and do it reliably and for the minimum total cost. That's their goal. And what they do is they link up the generators with the consumers, and they basically operate the transmission system. So they decide where those generators are actually going to generate, and then the electrons decide where they go. But then they go through the transmission system and hopefully will meet the loads, meet the demand that's coming from the consumers. So what they do is they organize the generators, the load entities, that's the demand, and in the MISO system, they have also introduced the opportunity for financial participants, and the reason for including those is so that they actually limit the opportunities for people to exercise market power. As I said, those large fluctuations in demand, or large fluctuations there in supply for the wind, create opportunities for someone to say, well, actually, if you want me to generate electricity, you're going to have to pay as much as you possibly can pay, because I know you don't have any other options. The financial participants are in there to try to limit that and to take advantage of that. And they're within this MISO system for that explicitly. The way the market works is buyers and sellers submit bids, and they submit them at particular points in the network, particular nodes or locations, all of whom are linked across the network by transmission lines. And then MISO decides. MISO solves this optimization problem to decide how the market should be cleared, who should be generating, who's going to be consuming, how much they'll be consuming. And they come up with prices. And they name those prices so that they can encourage other people to enter into the market. So you have a price that's given, for supplying let's say a megawatt of electricity at a given point in time for an hour. What they want to do is to encourage people to be able to absorb the demand or be able to absorb the lost supply when say, the wind dies down. Now, as I said, although the generation capacity is about 10% in this region, on average, at any point in time, maybe half of that is actually being used. Now, the way the market works is it operates in two time frames. It operates in a day. Oops, I went the wrong way. Okay, so it operates in a day ahead. And the reason for that is that it takes some time to get a coal or a natural gas plant started. So they need to have time to be able to prepare that plant when it's going to produce. And in order to do that, they have a day ahead market that decides when those plants are going to be scheduled. And then there's a real-time market in which they make adjustments, the minute-by-minute adjustments depending on what the wind is actually doing. Ideally, what should happen is that day-ahead market should not create any opportunities for someone to exercise market power. If that's true, then what should happen is that the day-ahead market should give prices that are basically the expectation of what happens in the following day. And that only whatever the last minute, either the wind is lower than we thought or the demand is higher, maybe it's hotter than we thought or cooler than we thought, then that would be adjusted during the real time. And the idea of that day ahead is so actually there's another optimization problem. There's an optimization problem run to decide what's the best way to clear this market. How can we do it and for the least amount of cost to meet all the demands that are going to be placed on the grid. So the generation is cheaper if we're able to plan it ahead like this. However, because of the limited transmission in the market, it creates pools in which some of these agents, some of the generators are allowed or are able to exercise market power. And so they have an incentive to try to withhold a little bit of electricity, drive the price up, and then collect by doing so. This is a graph just to show that that is actually what's happening. This is what happens if you decide to sell power a day ahead and then buy it back the next day. And what if you did that with a bank account at every point in this network, this is what would happen to your account. It would keep on going up over time. So what this says is there are people that are manipulating or they're taking advantage of the structure in this market in such a way that they're withholding in the day-ahead market, withholding how much they're actually going to produce in the future in order to drive up the price. They're getting a higher price by withholding, and the financial traders are not able to clear this market. What they should do when they see something like this is they should come into the market and say, okay, well, I'll sell in the day-ahead market. That should lower that price. That should make this curve flatten out so that it shouldn't be possible to always sell in the day-ahead market and then buy back and make money continuously over time. Now, that's what should happen with the financial traders, but in fact, what happens is the opposite. This is that would have been virtual supply. That would have been selling in the day-ahead market and then buying back. Those are the blue dots. So what should happen is that the blue dots, which are virtual supply, should be higher than the red dots, which are virtual demand. But what's surprising in this market is that the traders, and these are traders like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, the traders are doing the exact opposite of what the market designers intended for them to do. They're doing the opposite of what they should do. And so the question is, why would people who are supposedly sophisticated traders, these are Wall Street traders, why are they doing the exact opposite of what they should do? Well, it turns out the reason that they're doing the exact opposite of what they should do is that there is a separate market for transmission that they are also engaged in. And so they are effectively intentionally losing money in this market so that they can make money in a different market. And that's how all of these markets are interconnected and how they create opportunities for inefficiencies like what you see in this graph. So the issue is that these fixed models create nonlinearities and make it impossible to create a market where you get sort of flat prices, where the expectations always match and you get the quantities to match at the same time. None of these deterministic models can capture that. So although we're optimizing, and the deterministic models actually do a good job of optimizing the generation, if things are going to be exactly as predicted from the day ahead, what they're not capturing is the uncertainties, and that leads to the possibility of exploitation like we see with those financial traders. The resolution is to actually put uncertainty into the optimization. If we're allowed to put uncertainty optimization, solve the kinds of models that Burhan was showing on the screen, we're able to eliminate the possibilities for these inefficiencies to creep into those systems. So it enhances the ability of the smart grid to drive efficiency, and it reduces the incentives for these agents to exercise market power. The system that the MISO would have to solve would be determining units to meet load and maximize expected total surplus. So to put in their models of what the random wind or random solar power is going to be, or random demand, recognize the uncertainty, put it into their model, solve that, put some wind scenarios together, solve a model like this. This is the stochastic optimization model that they would be able to solve. Solve a model like that, and they'll be able to eliminate the kind of gaming and the market power and market manipulation that we see in these markets today. So the stochastic unit models reduce inefficiency. They reduce the opportunities for market manipulation. Now we are able to solve them with the kinds of techniques that Burhan was describing. They're able to then increase the value of the smart grid, so increase the value of having the smart kinds of technologies that are put into the grid. They increase the incentives for renewables, so they actually make it give more incentive for producing more from wind and solar, and they decrease volatility in market prices. Okay, well, thank you for your attention. Questions?